So, thanks to technology and very succinct presenters, we're nearly back on our time slot, so I really appreciate that. So our journey's gone from Canada, Ireland, and we're coming now back to Australia. So not via WA because we can't fly in there and we couldn't have got Matt back. But so Matt is going to be presenting on data and its use across the supply chain. Sometimes when I read bios, I sort of go into just how much, because over the period of time that Matt's been involved since he made the great decision to move to Australia with family, he's been involved not only in general agriculture and economics and through these initial company that brought him to Australia, but also had a long history at Holstein Australia, been involved in Dairy Australia, and now has been the CEO of DataGene. And throughout that journey, I think things around data and innovation and future-proofing things has been at the forefront of the work. So I'm looking forward to Matt's presentation around the data and supply chain. Thank you, Matt.
So good morning. How's everybody feeling this morning? Was the bar a good place last night? Good. This is going to be fun for me following Donna Berry. Thanks, organizers, for giving me the best spot in the house. At least it's a bar I can be sure not to meet. Right. Who here was in this room for Herd 09? A few of you. Who has been here for every Herd conference? A few of you. So what I want to do is I want to take you back to Herd 09. And I can remember quite vividly when we started talking about that. And Michelle, we spent a lot of time figuring out what we were going to do. And Carol Miller, who used to work for NHA at that point, spent a lot of time with this. One of the things that came out of that first conference, one of the things that got said again and again, and this is what I want to talk about today, was a quote from Lucy Andrews, who at that time worked for Holstein UK. And her comment was, what we want is data that's single entry, multi-use. And we've used that a lot over the years. So today what I'm going to talk about is the data side of the name DataGene. I can't do justice to the genetic side. We've had Jenny and her team and Donna do a much better job with that than I ever could, so I'm going to focus on data. So, sorry, getting confused looking at the different screens. What have we heard over the last couple days? And I did sit up last night trying to figure out how I was going to change my presentation, because some of the presentations yesterday made a bit of what I was going to talk about redundant. So what we've heard about is data integration. We've heard about how do we take information that farmers put in their farm management software, equipment software, sensors, milk companies, herd test centers, vets, NLIS, auditing, compliance, and financials, and how do we put all that together? Now, the danger is we end up going down this black hole or a vortex of data. And Jackie made a good point yesterday, which I think is quite important as we go forward. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. Donna made the same point. Just because we do have data and can get data doesn't mean we should. So I have a confession. I'm a data nut. Some of you may know that already. But I have to remind myself that we don't do this just for data's sake. It must serve a purpose and it must add value. We can end up down that black hole without a vision of what it can be used for. Well, I learned my lesson in 2003. So this is a photo of three of us who made this really silly decision that we were going to cycle across the continental US. So this is a photo on the first day of a 57-day torture fest when we started on the east coast of the US in Maine. Now, my father, who's in the bright green, was 65 years old. And we did it because he wanted us to do this. And I hate bikes. I've always hated bicycles. And so the first 2 weeks were absolute hell. But to distract myself, I did this. I created spreadsheets. I tracked everything. This is only an example of what I tracked. I tracked what I ate, how many times we had toilet stops. I tracked how many wind days we had, and we had a lot. And they were always headwinds. They were never tailwinds. But what I realized, it didn't actually make any difference. We didn't change a single decision because I tracked this data, but you know what? It distracted me from the pain. I still felt like throwing our bike off the cliff into the Pacific Ocean when we got to the end. But I forgot about the grinding day-to-day work of pedaling that damn bike. Fortunately, Dad passed away a few years later, but he taught me, do something with a purpose and do it well. So, what I'm going to do today, I'm going to walk through what we mean by single entry multi-use. So this is a photo of a mastitis treatment. What happens when Janet, who's sitting in the front here, records that treatment in that quarter of that cow? How is that data used? And what I'm going to describe for you is not how it's used today, but how it should be and where we should be going to. So, sorry, Janet, I'm going to use your photo and you'll see it up there for a little bit. But I thought you wouldn't mind me talking about you doing the right thing. So Janet's recorded this treatment in her software. It moves from her on-farm software into the central data repository, the data bucket, and then on to DataVat. And I'd like to think of DataVat as the microscope or the magnifying glass for industry to see what's in the data bucket. From there it moves in the herd test center software, and it can move into Janet's coming tool called the Select Dry Cow Therapy, where it can tell her that because this cow's had mastitis and had a treatment, that she probably needs to have dry cow therapy. So what we've done, we, the royal we sitting in this room, have given Janet a decision tool that she then can use. So then it goes from there into the service provider world. So because Janet has given access to her service providers on DataVat to be able to see her data, to see the fact that she's treated this cow for mastitis, she can have better mating advice. So when you come on farm and this cow gets a straw, should have a bull that's probably pretty good for mastitis resistance. You can also start to see things for nutrition advice and repro advice. And you can do that because we've created DataVat that allows access for the industry. Pretty creepy picture in today's world. But from an industry perspective, we have a responsibility for antibiotic stewardship. We have a growing responsibility to demonstrate that farmers are doing their part to reduce antibiotic usage, and consumers will demand this. Janet's recorded that in her software. It then goes into the metrics that we can then report on as an industry about the actions we're taking as industry and as farmers to protect the health of our cows in an ethical manner. We have to care for our animals, and we have to answer the demands of the global consumer. And because Janet's recorded that, and it's come through the system, we're able to do that. Milk companies. We haven't had a lot to do with them over the years as some of our service providers. That data point that Janet's entered into her computer on her farm should flow through to her QA process with that milk processor. She shouldn't have to keep a paper copy of that. She shouldn't have to fill out another online question and answer service. We should be able to enable Janet to give access to her milk company to DataVat so they can get in and see what they need to see from her. We don't need that multi-entry. And that allows the milk company to meet the consumer requirements of traceability, sustainability, ethical practices, etc. And that demonstration of these actions is going to grow in importance. It's certainly not going to get any less. In a related vein, organizations like Dairy Food Safety Victoria and their counterparts in other states are working to try to simplify the way they regulate. And you can see in the middle there, the RegTech portal. And DSFV is doing a lot of work trying to figure out how do they streamline things. That data point that Janet has entered should be part of this. We should be able to simplify the audit process. We should be able to manage by exception. We should be able to see that without the farmer having to do a lot of extra work. And genetics. That record that's in the system also goes to help a bull proof. It goes against the daughter, goes against the bull, and it adds information to the proof, and eventually helps the reference population. So all of this is because of a single action that Janet took on her farm. We as industry have a responsibility to enable the background to connect. And that's what we've been trying to do. So I've just said what I'd like it to look like. Where are we? How can we demonstrate the power of doing this through the supply chain? We can see it, but we can't touch it yet. Or can we? Steph and Erica, two people in the room, have done a lot of work over the last little bit. Helen Dorner, who's not in the room, working with milk processors to demonstrate and measure the incidence of health events on farm and antibiotic usage, and created a proof of concept that starts to show the industry's antibiotic use, farmer practice, and incidence rates. This is only a proof of concept at this stage, but this is where we should be heading. And each farm should be able to see that. Each farm should be able to say, how do I compare against industry standard, against industry benchmark? We have the power to do this. We just have to wield it carefully. So the next question from my point of view, going back to my useless spreadsheets that I created on my bike trip, was how do we actually add value? How do we make it worthwhile for farmers to collect data? Over the last 12 months, probably a bit more, sometimes it feels like many, many years for some of us in the industry, we've worked really collaboratively with the herd test centers to develop a platform that modernizes their ability to deliver their reports and add value to the data. This has been a completely collaborative approach. We've worked with a crew up in Armidale called ABRI to help with the development of it. And it's a platform that enables farmers to interrogate their herd test data and to visualize in a different way than they've had access to in the past. But it's also a platform that creates a framework for future value. So these future value-added services, such as the mere fertility predictor that we road testing in the spring, and the select dry cow therapy that have been mentioned. So this is a platform that will help deliver that. And it sits within the context of DataVat, so that there's a single point of entry, so farmers don't have to do what Deborah talked about, which is bounce from website to website, software to software. So it sits within DataVat, single point of entry, and a seamless integration of data that moves back and forth. It's a complex tool, easy to use, but quite detailed with a lot of features. I'm not going to attempt to do that today. All I'm going to do is show you a few screenshots to give you a sense of what it does. So the home page is a dashboard, and some of you may remember the herd test dashboard. Some of you will get it in the post as part of your reports, which give you an overview of your herd, its performance and trends. So stats at a glance. It also allows you to visualize the data on a herd. This is an instance of ketosis risk, and to see which cows are at risk of ketosis. Now at this stage, this on fat protein ratio. We heard Jenny yesterday talk about, and Heather also in the morning, talk about predicting ketosis from milk mid-infrared. That will slot seamlessly into here. We simply replace the prediction of the ketosis risk with the new mid-infrared. You can click through, you can see the individual animals, you can go then and see what their breeding, etc. is as well. You can also benchmark your herd. Deborah was talking about picking a region and picking a type of herd. You can do that through this tool. You can benchmark on various things across different regions across the country, across different sizes. There's not an option for robots. That may come. And importantly, where the red circle is where we would expect that the new tools would sit. So it's a platform that delivers. So I've shown you two examples of where we are going and what we can see already, but how do we keep making progress on this? So coming back to this data integration question that's come up through this conference. One way of doing it is a project called IDDEN, and it rivals the name of HISIG, I think, in terms of useless acronyms. But it stands for the International Dairy Data Exchange Network. And what it really means, it's a group of countries who got together and said, we all have an interest in making it simple to move data between equipment manufacturers and national databases. So there are 13 countries, 20 million dairy cows represented. So you've got countries from Canada, US, Germany, Holland, Scandinavia, and obviously Australia. And through the support of Dairy Australia, we've been able to be a founding member of this consortium. And what this consortium aims to do is create a hub that will allow an equipment manufacturer to create a single pipe and exchange data with every international or national database around the world. From my point of view as Datagene, it also means that I only have to create one pipe into the hub, and I can get all the information from the different equipment manufacturers. It also means that some of the domestic Australian software providers, such as Easy Dairy, can also then get all that information from all those other systems through one pipe into the central data repository that we've created as an industry. What do I mean in practice? So at the moment, the testing is going on in Europe between DLaval systems on farm and the national databases. So the testing's already going using this IDDEN hub. When that goes live in the next few months, and Australia connects in the next few months, it will mean that all farmers who use DLaval systems in Australia, with the correct software update, because we suddenly realize that there are quite a few versions of DLaval software in existence, that information can come through to us. We've never had that before. We don't even know the quantity that we'll get from this. But how exciting is it that with a flick of a switch, because we've had support from Dairy Australia and ongoing support from Holstein Australia and NHA, we're part of this on the ground, and we can now say, what's the next goal? The next goal are things like GIA, it's the next cab off the rank. Connecting into Zoetis, so that we can move service provider information as well, into sensors, NEDAP, Alflex. How do we start to move that data so that we simplify this process? We saw this a lot on our bike trip. A lot of broken pavement, a lot of sore bums. We will see a lot more broken pavement on this journey that we're on. Going back to 2009, did we think it would take us this long to get here? Probably not. Is the journey worth it? Absolutely. We don't have 14 miles more to go, we have 1,000, because we never actually get to the end. Because if you do, that means there's no more dairy industry, and that's not a good thing. We actually want to keep going, we want to keep improving, we want to keep allowing our farmers to be sustainable and profitable into the future. But we know why we're doing this, and it's to enable you in this room as service providers, provide a better service to farmers. That's why we're here. We have to overcome the industry politics that are involved in this. We have to overcome the fear of sharing the data. We don't want to share because we control it. Rubbish. We need to use that data to help farmers and to help the industry progress. We know that there's complexity in the data systems. We know that sometimes a cow is actually not a cow in another system. And the ID that's used in one system isn't the same. We know all of that. We still have to take that first step, and we still have to try. The prize is too great. and we owe it to our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. That's a great presentation, and I suppose the one thing it does kind of, it's really nice to have someone in the room too and succinct. So we do have, I've got one question here for you, Matt, which I think you can do, from Andrea Henry. How can this room full of service providers help farmers understand how important data is to make their lives easier but their businesses more profitable?
It's a good question. And I think unfortunately, there's no silver bullet like most things in life. It's about the small steps we take every day. It's showing how, for instance, with the example I used with Janet, how does that one piece of data get used multiple times? How does that impact the farmer's bottom line? There are not that many farmers, some of you may be in the room today, but not that many who like data for data's sake. I may do that. I don't expect other people to do that. So we have to show them that collecting that data actually makes a difference to their business. It can also make a difference to the way that they get services provided back to them. So if I can say to a farmer, look, if you collect this data, I can give you better advice. I can help you, or I can save you money because I don't have to come to your farm and spend 3 hours, I can come to your farm and spend 2 hours. And those are the kind of concrete things I think as an industry we need to work through so that we understand the importance of it. And for me, it's not about the data. What are we doing with the data? It's the information we get. It's the tools that we create. Donna and Deborah did a great job this morning of talking about all the possibilities. We just have to start grasping them.
So, no other questions from the floor? Trevor, there's a mic at the back if you want to. Or if
I think I can handle that. Matt, two things. I'm sorry to bring this first one up, but we've been talking about it for a long time now. We still have a lot of inline information that's not getting anywhere. And I feel like, I shouldn't be banging on about it because I'm a bit embarrassed, but we're going nowhere with it. Have you got some sort of idea? Do I need it? Right.
So, Trevor, let me paraphrase if I can and see if I understand your question. So that'll help the online audience as well. So you're asking me, we haven't done anything about inline meters. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Good. Got that straight. So we are doing something. That DLiVol connection that I just mentioned, guess what comes with it? Inline meters.
Yes, so we have a significant percentage of those in this country. And the other question goes back to that DLiVol thing, a little bit of a trend at the moment, working with individual companies. We live in a society that we don't really encourage, or you like to see competition. When we're dealing with one company like that, is there opportunities for others to come in the future? Is that just a starting point, or are these locked-in agreements where there's only ever going to be one corporate organisation involved with us?
Absolutely not. So the idea behind all of this is, and Datagene was founded on the principle that data needs to come from wherever we can get it and go to wherever it needs to go. So in the IDDEN case, we had to start somewhere, so we wanted to start with some of the big low-hanging fruit and then go on from there. But it is an open platform that anybody can use, and I think that's actually quite important because I think we do need to have that openness and ability to use it from wherever it comes from. The other point I'd make related to that, Trevor, and I thank you for raising it because it made me think of it that I hadn't talked about it. Proprietary data. It belongs to somebody. Really? Does it? We need to be able to do, and you need to be able to demand, that it goes where you need it to go. We can't force data, we, being Datagene, can't force data to go anywhere. But as a consumer, as a farmer who pays for the services, you can help with this discussion and help us move the data around to help you with a better service. So Graham, while I also think about it, because I'm very forgetful and turned 50 this year and feel really old, I forgot a couple thank yous that I wanted to do at the end. And two big ones I want to call out. Deanne and John, wherever you are in the back, thank you for keeping the faith. This has been quite a journey, Graham, whether we're going to be here today. And it's so nice to be out of my suburb. And the second one, AV guys, fantastic job. I've really enjoyed it. It's amazing to see everything work, and it's been a pleasure. And the other thank yous, the usual suspects, our funders, our collaborators, our farmers, our Jinfo farmers, particularly for what they give to us, and the rest of industry and our customers. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do what we do, and we wouldn't be able to try to keep pushing this envelope to make the changes that we make to give you a better service. So I think I might be done.
Okay, thank you, Matt. On behalf